Okay, I'm excited for this. Everybody's going to get smarter. So you run Rotten Tomatoes. I grew up, how old are you?
I am, what year is it? 45.
Okay, you grew up with Siskel and Ebert.
Yes, I did.
You grew up with newspaper critics.
Yes, I did.
And at some point, maybe it's too many critics, too many voices, Siskel and Ebert, health issues, one passed away, one later. In my opinion, you are now the place where me and my friends go. When did you sense Rotten Tomatoes had really popped?
You know, it was around the time that Ebert really slowed down in his writing. And, you know, there was that first round of illness, and we started seeing that people were quoting our scores in the media.
People in Hollywood.
In Hollywood, you know, a lot of movie coverage would get, oh, this movie did this well on the tomato meter, and they would quote the scores. And for 8 or 9 years, I've been editor-in-chief of Rotten Tomatoes for 9 years, and we very consciously set out to get people to use the scores. And you'll see the little certified fresh badge when a movie is certified fresh. We've been encouraging the movie marketers to use that. Pixar early on was putting that on their websites. Now you'll see, this summer we saw broadcast spots from Paramount for Star Trek saying an incredible score, certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes on their TV spots.
So I assume most people have not heard of this, even though they have, but people are driving around the country right now. So if I go to RottenTomatoes.com, tell them, first of all, who is creating the score.
So the score it's a percentage of positive reviews. It's not an average. A lot of people think it's an average. It is we boil every review down to fresh or rotten, and then the number is simply a percentage of critics that liked the movie, that said it's good.
Very simple.
Very simple.
I have a line, John, Kristine, and Greg, about 76 to 77. If it's that or above, what is your line in your opinion, which means good movie or not?
It's tough for me because I end up seeing so many things. I'm out seeing 5-6 movies a week. So I don't have that luxury. I will say, if something's up in the 90s, I know that I need to make time to see it.
Yes, that's a great movie. Give me the last 3 or 4 years, 90 movies. Silver Lining Playbook, maybe.
Silver Lining Playbook. Argo. In theaters right now, expanding nationwide, Hell or High Water. In the 90s, terrific movie. Jeff Bridges, Chris Pine, that's a must-see movie.
That's one of the ones my wife liked. Now, Jonah Hill's in a movie. How's that doing?
War Dogs. It's okay. It's
so what's the score on your site?
It's 59, 60,
kind of
depends on the... Well, and I'll tell you, 59 is where we mark a movie rotten, and at 60, we call it fresh.
What about Sausage Party?
Sausage Party in the high 80s.
It was so good. You have to see Sausage
Now that movie's dirty. Do not take the children.
No, it's
the same thing that came up with Deadpool, right? A lot of people were asking, like, can I take my kids to Deadpool? Absolutely not.
Okay, are there times, because this is an aggregate of all your critics, how do you choose the critics? Who makes your list?
So we're looking for professionals. What we're looking for is, in broad strokes, we're looking for professional critics who have some background in either studying film or writing about film. So it's a lot of newspaper critics, although we know that, you were talking earlier in the show about budgets shrinking. Arts criticism is one of the things that goes too. So we're following critics as they self-publish on the web.
Okay.
We're looking, there's broadcast critics like Richard Roper.
I trust Richard.
There's some online native critics, but typically it's people who are online journalists and have a background. We're looking for quality of writing. We're looking for reach. We're looking for the most important voices. So it's not just amateurs. It's not some guy in his basement like, oh, I'm going to just start writing reviews of this movie. That's not what we're looking for. What we really need is people who are willing to be as positive as they are negative, because those negative reviews of the big movies, that's really what kind of makes the business for us.
All right, Matt Atchity is joining us. He's Rotten Tomatoes editor-in-chief. That's where I go. Sometimes I am surprised by the rating. I think Tombstone is one of the most underrated movies, especially in that genre, ever. It got a 73.
Yeah, that one's a little bit low, and I think one of the issues with Tombstone is that's at a point where I think the general audience is not used to seeing a Western like that. It goes on, I will say, where the negative reviews on that one come down is that it goes on a little bit too long.
Yeah.
That's a movie.
Most Westerns do.
And like a lot of movies, that's a movie you could cut 20 minutes out of, and it would be almost perfect.
Yeah, I think it's Val Kilmer's best stuff.
It absolutely is. Ebert used to say that. That's one of his best performances ever.
Is there a movie, Matt Atchity, Rotten Tomatoes, that you were pulling for? I mean, listen, you're human. Are there times when you're like, the critics missed? Is there a movie? Forrest Gump, for instance, won all the awards, took years to make. How did it do on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's in the 60s.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, but when's the last time you watched Forrest Gump?
Yeah, it didn't last.
Right. Like that's one of those ones that doesn't hold up. That's the thing is we look back on some of these movies with rose-colored glasses, and then you go back and watch them, and you think,
That's a really good point.
That happens a lot.
By the way, Shawshank Redemption, Platoon, I can watch. I can watch Argo every time. What's the highest scoring movie in the history?
The best reviewed one, it goes back and forth. Last I checked, best reviewed was Toy Story 2, which is at 100% with something like 200 reviews. So it's really hard to maintain that perfect 100% because eventually somebody says, this movie's not all that. And Toy Story 2 is probably the best reviewed. It was between that and a documentary called Man on Wire for a while.
Oh, that's my favorite documentary of all time.
Yeah, it goes back and forth between those two because people will add more recent reviews, which we let them do because a more recent review is the tomato meter for each movie is a living document. So that if somebody tomorrow writes, if a professional critic tomorrow writes a review for Man on Wire, that'll get counted.
Ever a zero?
There are a bunch of zeros. The worst reviewed movie on the site
I'm very excited for this.
stars Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu, and it's called Ballistic, X versus Sever. It's a perfect zero with something like 80 or 90 reviews.
Wow.
A zero.
A zero. That means everyone kind of says, ugh. Yeah.
What about Battlefield Earth with Travolta?
That's last I looked, that's at like a 6.
Yeah, that was bad.
I know a bunch of the really, really bad ones.
What about Bad Moms? You said that was really bad.
Okay, so Bad Moms I walked out of. I've walked
Really?
out of.
I like Bad Moms.
Come on. I thought the first 20 minutes were too vulgar. And then I walked out and my wife said the last 30 were great. And I said, I didn't get to it. I thought it was too vulgar initially.
Yeah, that's a movie. If you're not on board with what Kathryn Hahn is doing, then you're not on board with that movie. Like, that's the movie where Kathryn Hahn is kind of full Kathryn Hahn, like that raunchy humor that she does really well, but it can be off-putting. It's, that's the mom's version of Sausage Party almost.
Okay, a movie release date. Listen to my audience now, or my audience, I want you to listen to this because this says a lot. A movie release date can say a lot about a film, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now the studios will say otherwise, right? The marketing people are now saying, oh my God, what is he going to say? You can tell how confident a movie is based on a few things. And one is when they release it. So if they release something in May or June or July 4th weekend, you know that the studio is really trying to get that summer audience.
And they like the film.
Similarly, if it's a big movie, a wide release that they're releasing in November, December, a drama, an action movie, the more active movies kind of get towards the holiday season, either Thanksgiving weekend or Christmas weekend. And that means the studio is pretty confident. But the dramas, they'll release in November, December because they think that they're going to get awards consideration. So
if a movie, Hell and High Water, you said excellent, it just got released in August.
August. Now, that's a little bit different with platform releases. A movie like Hell or High Water releases in LA and New York. And if it does well with audiences in those cities or on the tomato meter, because we really can move the needle on these limited release films, it'll get a buzz. A movie like that would struggle to open in a big national 2,000 screen release. So they open it in a handful of theaters in LA and New York. Everybody starts chattering about it, and then it goes nationwide. That's exactly what happened with The Hurt Locker. And they rode that wave all the way to Best Picture.
You're talking about, and I would think the movie critics, do you get in fights with studios?
The studios get real nervous about what we say, and you'll see, there'll be all kinds of kind of deflection and, we want to connect with the audience. And, a lot of things that come up a lot of times is you'll see the initial tomato meter score and the audience score will be higher, and they'll say, the audience knows better.
Okay, so you have I care about the critics.
Right.
So I'm going to go to the critic score. The audience tends to be a little more sophomoric, and I tend to mostly agree with critics or a close circle of friends. I don't necessarily go with what the audience. Give me an example of a movie that did horrible with critics, but a home run with people.
It depends on that starts to get into what do you call a home run, right? You could argue Batman v Superman did really well opening weekend because it made $166 million, and it's 29% on the tomato meter, right? Like that's
critics
not good.
Hated it.
They really didn't like that movie.
But the public was okay with it.
However, I will say, if you look just a month and a half later, Captain America, which in very broad strokes is telling almost the same story. Two heroes fighting each other, a lot of the same ground, is a better reviewed movie, is by all accounts a better film, and opens almost 20 million more and lasts a lot longer. So
when the tail's longer, that means word of mouth. Sometimes stuff starts hot
Right.
and dies. That's a bad movie.
Right. It's almost, you can't judge. It'd be like judging a basketball team or a football team on their first game of the season, right? Oh, there was a blowout the first game. That's how great they are. Well, watch the whole season. And when it comes to a movie release, yeah, sure. Marketing can open a movie big, but it's that second and third and fourth weekend. Does it still have legs, as they call it? Does it still, are people still interested in still talking about it?
Matt Atchity, Rotten Tomatoes editor-in-chief. And finally, Contact got a 62 rating, deeply depressed. I think it's one of the great sci-fi movies. It converged, John. See, I'm very nuanced. It converged faith and science and space, and they all came together. So I thought it had a texture that most sci-fi movies didn't, and it got nothing from you guys.
No, that's not nothing. That's fresh.
62
that's 62. That's fresh.
barely fresh.
It's barely
I wouldn't
fresh.
use that in my arugula.
Well-
That's not a great tomato.
What I will tell everybody,
think arugula
what I
has
say all the
tomato.
time is, look,
It's
like if there's a
lettuce.
movie, it's first of all, it's okay to like movies critics don't like. I love every Fast and Furious movie, honest to God, because I'm a car guy. And the one thing those movies do is they get the cars right. The movies may not be great, but I like watching the
Okay,
cars.
fair enough.
Right? There's some sports movies. Rudy will bring a tear to your eye, and it's not at 100%. There are people who find Rudy to be a little over the top.
Corny.
Little corny. That's where they are with Contact a little bit. Like there's some people who think, some of the critics say, it's a little corny, and it doesn't work for them, as opposed to that really, really sharp book, right? We forget that Contact is based off the book, right? And that book, I think, adaptations can be a little bit tough. And
Do you have it? Do you have them all memorized, the scores?
I do not. No. Fortunately, there's a site that keeps them all for me.
What's that?
Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, yeah, you guys have it all.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like
no, I
you're
don't
dropping a
memorize all the
bomb on
scores.
me
You
or
seem
something
to know all
No.
of them.
No, I don't. I look some of them up, but the funny thing is I'm seeing so many movies that at any given time, my movie knowledge is only for about 2 weeks in any direction.
That's too much.
And then otherwise I can't, like if you ask me what I've just seen, unless you start naming titles, I have trouble remembering what I've just seen. I mean, that's the dark side of this is there's a lot of mediocre movies out of there.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot.
I see about 7 a year max, and I only go to the good ones. Hey, great meeting you.
Great meeting you. Thanks for having me.
Rotten Tomatoes, editor-in-chief, Matt Atchity. It's The Herd.